Welcome to the Namibia Needs Me podcast, a platform where we take contemporary news stories and incorporate civic education into so that we are better able to create a conversation around what is relatable, currently happening in the country, to be able to share with you and have a creative discussion. Stay tuned.
Morning, Janela. How
All
are
right.
you?
Hi, Ethne. How are you?
Good. We've got four stories we want to get through today, and I want to mention right at the start and at the end that there are 2 days left for the supplementary
Registration
registration.
of voters, yeah.
Do you want to tell us more about that, just to remind our listeners to go out and get registered for the regional and local authority elections later this year?
Yes, so as we previously announced, we currently from the 4th of August to the 19th of August, the Electoral Commission of Namibia has its voter registration, supplementary registration of voters period now open. During this time, the voters are allowed to either register for the first time, meaning you only turned 18 after the last voter registration period closed last year, or maybe you just turned 18 this year, then you have to register to get your voter's card now. Or if you would like to make amendments to your voter's card, for instance, you move to another location, or now you are studying student and now you are no longer in your hometown, but you're now here at UNAM or NAST, in the hostel. So this period is there to allow us to make changes within these days. And now there are only 2 days left.
Fantastic. Let's go straight to our first story. So the
Yes.
Oshakati High Court ruled that senior police officers must return the land that they illegally seized from a widow.
Yeah.
This is kind of a widow land grabbing that we've been seeing a lot in the news. And these were senior police officers, but police deputy chief
Eliezer Liambo.
Liambo and his brother had evicted Ali Elende from her late husband's home and farm. In 2019, so this has been a long battle, and they finally won. There are a few interesting things about this for me. The rule of law and separation of powers. What does this tell you about the rule of law, do you think?
Yeah, so basically in 2014, her land was seized from her after her husband died. And what the police chief and his brother now claimed was that they were told to take accountability of the land by the late brother, which now the matter was taken to court, and finally there's some justice for this widow. And we've heard a lot about these red line marriages, where marriages above the red line are always out of community of property. Marriages below the red line are in community of property. So they could sort of use that to unfairly displace this widow, which was not good. But you can see how finally, concerning the rule of law, the matter was taken to court, a judge adjudicated the matter, and it was then ended in the favor of the widow.
Okay, so even senior police officers are not above the law and can be held accountable
Can be, yes.
when they commit crimes like seizing land from widows.
Yeah.
That's also something interesting about the separation of powers, right? So the executive branch, the police, were held accountable by the judicial branch, the
Exactly,
courts.
yeah.
But then also there's something cute about the customary law that happened here, because the Ongadira Traditional Authority had already ruled in the widow's favor that the land and the home belonged to her. And the police disagreed with the traditional authorities. And here we have the courts coming up and supporting the decisions of the traditional authorities. And that's a nice thing to emphasize as well.
Yeah.
That courts do support traditional authorities as well.
Yeah.
But also I like what you highlighted about inheritance law. And there's so much misconception about this distinction between the red line. But the fact remains that there is equality, gender equality in inheritance laws. So there is absolutely no reason why a widow should have her land taken away from her when
like by the brothers in this case, while she was legally married, civilly married.
If the land would not have been taken away from her husband upon her death, the land should not be taken away from her upon her husband's death. So that's just also an important thing to emphasize, because for some reason these misconceptions still persist.
Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. This is the podcast for curious minds and people who understand that change starts at home. Don't be intimidated by your news. Follow it with me and Janola as we break it down into simple terms and ways that you can affect real change.
Then our second story is on youth participation in democracy. And this is something that I know that you've done such important work on, Janola. The story summary is that the Namibia Media Trust released a report on Youthquake, during Youthquake, which was last week, and we shared a lot about how much went on there, and it looked like a really wonderful event. A research report called Namibia's Youth and Political Participation, and this has just been released just last week during Youthquake, and it finds that our youth are really eager to participate in
getting
politics.
involved.
Not only did we see in 2024 a surge in votes by the youth, but also in terms of digital activism, issue-based activism, organizing, debating, discussing, mobilizing around issues. Youth are active and they're eager to participate, but they're curbed by economic, cultural barriers. What are those economic and cultural barriers, do you think, Janola?
I think, first of all, in terms of resource mobilization, like a lot of times young people have great ideas, great things they want to advocate about, but sometimes how to do these things is a challenge. And you see, as part of Namibia Needs Me, that is often what we try to mitigate. So through this project, we have what we call a student advocacy training. This is like a 2-day training where we capacitate young people, university students, on meaningful advocacy.
Because you're always going on about how democratic participation actually strengthens democracy, actually strengthens trust in democratic institutions. But what we are seeing is that youth are largely unemployed. That is a massive structural barrier to participation. It's difficult for most of us to find the time and the capacity to be involved and to really meaningfully participate in democracy. But when you're also unemployed, that's a real structural barrier. But other than that, there is also a cultural element
to it,
which is this gatekeeping. Youth especially, are being pushed aside and pushed away and excluded, meaningfully excluded. Can you tell us more about that?
Okay, particularly in terms of the cultural element, you see, in African culture, and which is, what we grow up knowing as young people here, is that you must respect your elders. But we are often put in a situation where there is injustice by the system through which these elders are in charge. So often how we approach leadership is very much like we shouldn't speak against elders. We should not.
I always call it deference to authority.
Authority, yes, that's how it is looked at, yes.
and this Youthquake really emphasized, I think Zoe Titus, who we know as the executive director of NMT, Namibia Media Trust, emphasized that we have to be able to hold power to account. You always are going on about how democratic participation is not only a right, but also a duty. You're actually obliged to participate and to get access to that information that you need to hold power to account.
Or get a situation redressed in your favor. You see, these are instruments or what is guaranteed by our constitution, that if there is something you have a challenge with, whether it is with regards to a right issue or access to information issue, we are, as per the constitution, have the power to demand for change, to ask questions.
Exactly. But so often we're asking questions that just never get answers to. Which is why this push by many players in the civil society organization sphere are pushing for access to information is such a critical tool, because without good legislation around access to information, and that information should be published preemptively, we don't have the information needed to hold people to account. We don't know really how many GBV centers there are, or we get statistics about the number of people in a certain region that have been affected by something, but not the percentage when it comes to the national population. So real access to information. Who has been procured in the last year and in which ways, and give us access to all that information is such an important part of actually being able to hold anyone to account.
No, really it is. And I think one interesting thing of note concerning that report as released at the Youthquake was that actually digital activism is growing. That more and more young people are putting their opinions out there. They're making their stands clear. And we've seen that even through our engagements, how young people have testified of successful petitions they've had either at university level or at community level. And a lot of times these petitions are signed online. So you can see that young people are beginning to take agency, which
And
is something very good. Yeah.
And they're beginning to understand that youth are not only the leaders of tomorrow. I think this
Yeah.
was a line by Zoe Titus or someone else at Unpack.
They lead today. Yeah.
Youth are not only the leaders of tomorrow, but of today.
Yeah.
And the example you just mentioned is such a beautiful illustration of how petitions and other forms of activism, even if it is digital, has real world implications.
Yeah.
And can make your life better right now. And can hold leadership to account right now.
Yeah. Namibia Needs Me is a civic education project co-implemented by the Hans Seidel Foundation and the Namibia Institute for Democracy. This project ultimate objective is to foster and strengthen democratic participation from all eligible voters and young people in the country. Yeah, so basically the case continues as some of us may know. A few weeks ago, 3 weeks to be exact, a few former Namcor executives were arrested on allegations of corruption, misappropriation of funds, bribery, and things like that. So the case basically continues. And what recently has happened is that ultimately the lawyers of this particular
defense
lawyers have started questioning the case, the state's case in itself, saying that the state rushed into arrest. There was no proper consultation done with the defendants in that regard. Ethne, what is your take on that?
I mean, the most striking moment is that photo that we saw of the notes made by the defense lawyer during the prosecutions.
That was so hilarious. He literally drew did you see some rough?
So to illustrate this, the defense lawyer, the person defending the accused,
two of the accused,
made a point to the court that the other people's argument was weak. And his way of proving that the other people's argument was weak was to show his own notes on a piece of paper, which were scribbles. Yeah,
which appeared to be, you know how when a child draws some things, you know how untidy it looks? That is basically an attempt used to illustrate how... It
illustrates nothing other than how desperate you are when that is the only point that you can make.
Yeah. But you see, Ethne, this story basically shows us that, you see, when an arrest is made and people are in court, that is not full and final. Those same individuals still have the right to be defended. And basically what these lawyers wanted to do was sort of illustrate that. And that is the beauty of democracy, that when the state brings off a case, you as an individual, you have the opportunity to defend yourself, or you have the right to representation. Well, I mean, I question the methods they're using to do it, but you can really see democracy at play, that the state's case can be challenged by lawyers,
Oh, absolutely. Of course. It's just an illustration of the extent needed to go to at the moment to have an argument.
Yeah. I actually listened to a few of the cases, from beginning to the end, and you could see that it's a very heated discussion currently in court. I've also heard the testimony of the ACC investigator. Truth be told, my opinion is that he's a little bit not partial, but obviously he's trying to defend his case and justify his arrest, which is very much needed.
It's not really his job to be partial.
No, it is the ACC's job.
They has to be impartial.
Yes, they have a statutory duty to be objective at all times.
Oh, absolutely. But making a case for arrests when they've done their work to prove that there has been corruption or fraud, it is his job to then present that.
Yeah. Plus, the lawyers also further claim that the police, the ACC in this regard, use sort of the media as an instrument to push their agenda. You see, now you have another element of democracy in play where you have the media as a information dissemination instrument, trying to then push a different narrative, which the lawyer said that was done in such a way so as to affect the case and therefore the bail hearing.
Absolutely.
So it's very interesting.
But that's also an argument, in any case, the media is going to be involved. But what are your facts? Let's get to some facts.
Yes. So the facts of the...
harping on about the influence of the media is perhaps an indication that you don't have other facts to back up your arguments.
Yes. So the fact of the matter is that, yes, there is alleged foul play in the sense of misappropriation of funds, bribery, fraudulent activity.
Yeah, and so everyone does know about this from the media,
presumably.
Don't be left behind. Don't miss out on a single week. Like this episode and subscribe so that you can stay abreast of what's happening in the country and the change that affects your life. We're also available on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we have an excellent website with all the resources that you need.
Shall we move on to the Jesus Hawala case?
Yes. Do you want to give a little bit of a background?
I mean, yeah, sure. So Solomon Jesus Hawala, who was nicknamed the Butcher of Lubango, had recently passed away. And this is resurfacing old discussions about a lack of accountability when it comes to what happened in the military bases and detention centers.
Prior to independence, yeah.
Yes. So SWAPO's liberation struggle had a need to deal with infiltration of apartheid forces, and the way that it was dealt with was allegedly in dungeons where there are many testimonies of torture that took place. And the person at the head of Plan, who was a military wing of SWAPO at the time, was the Butcher of Lubango. And he got that title because of the atrocities that took place there at the time. And there have been many calls for justice and for dealing with this over the years, but that has largely been met with silence and hostility because many of the people who are accused of having been responsible for this are in positions of power. And this was one of those people who has now passed away. You know, unlike South Africa, we didn't have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We haven't had any formal ways of dealing with past atrocities.
And I think one major thing that particular article illustrates was that upon the death of the late general, the office of the president came out and said, no, he's always been an advocate of peace and democracy. But a social media uproar, is now currently, a lot of people are discussing, but this person was at the front end of killing his own that were suspected of being spies on behalf of, the apartheid regime. And that a lot of times, these kinds of atrocities, now that we are an independent country, are not spoken about. Not that they mean anything now, but in the sense that, and the article even uses the German 1904 to 1907 genocide as an example to say that is something that has happened that we are still healing from. Why can't we, as we speak about that thing, also speak about this atrocity that our own did to us, so as to also heal? So these two situations were basically compared by the article and obviously on social media and X conversations on how Namibia often praises war heroes and turns a blind eye to, some of the atrocities that they did. And that is basically currently the situation, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is being pitted as one against the other, that we either celebrate the liberation movement or we criticize it.
Yeah,
and actually the two can exist at the same time. We can both celebrate and be grateful for the liberation movement at the same time as creating a culture of democracy, because if we let things like this slide, we build a culture of impunity instead of building a culture of democracy where people are held accountable at the same time as being celebrated.
Yeah. No,
I don't want to celebrate wrongdoing. You can celebrate a liberation movement without needing to say that liberation movement didn't have any faults.
Or even to say we appreciate the person's role in terms of getting Namibia independence. However, we will address this challenge head on. Yeah. And that is ultimately what the people want at the moment.
Absolutely.
They want government to address this thing head on and not hide behind the person's role in terms of peace, unity after independence to justify why they cannot mention
unity and reconciliation, peace and unity. So at the same time, having these open discussions, I think is a call for peace. It's not a call for disruption.
Yeah.
A call for open discussion
and
saying,
healing,
this will make us more resilient and it will prevent these types of things from happening again.
Yeah. Wow, no, what an exciting line of stories that we've had.
Let's remind everyone again that there are 2 days remaining for the supplementary registration
of voters,
for the regional and local council elections later this year.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time, Janola.
No, thank you. Always a pleasure being with you, Anthony.
And you. Cheers.
Bye.